Happy,
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 happy
Halloween,
Halloween,
Halloween, Halloween,
Halloween,
Halloween,
Halloween,
happy
happy.
Silver Shamrock.
Hello, everyone. I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I am joined by Connor Nielsen. Connor, how are you doing today?
I am doing excellently. How are you?
I am doing very spooky because that was the worst thing ever. Because we are talking about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. You chose this movie. It is directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. It is produced by John Carpenter. Stars Tom Atkins, Stacey Nelkin, and our Twin Peaks connection because Connor and we talk about movies and TV shows with actors and alumni from Twin Peaks. Our Twin Peaks connection is Dan O'Hurley, who was Andrew Packard in season 2 of Twin Peaks. Connor, why don't you tell us a little bit about Halloween, Season of the Witch?
For those who may not know, Halloween was a film directed by John Carpenter. It was a movie where Jamie Lee Curtis was stalked by a serial killer named Michael Myers, and at the end, there was a. Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Uh, for whatever reason, my Siri on my phone thought I was talking to her. What did I say? Did I
I
say
don't know.
serial killer?
That might have been it, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to leave all this in, by the way.
I hope you do. Anyways, so Jamie Lee Curtis played a girl named Laurie Strode. She was stalked by a serial killer named Michael Myers. And at the end, there was a little bit of a cliffhanger. They made a sequel called Halloween 2, which picked up that very same night, told the rest of the story, or, was really just kind of a cheap, lazy cash in. But moving forward after that movie, the concept behind the Halloween franchise was it was going to be an anthology where every new movie would bring with it a new spooky Halloween story. And the first foray and only foray into that concept was this 1982 film Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. This movie was widely hated and widely criticized, and because of that reception, everyone just wanted more Michael Myers, please. So after this, they decided to listen to the fans, and that's how we get Halloween 4, 5, and 6, and Resurrection, and H2O, and the Rob Zombie remakes, and all that. So if it says Halloween on it, it's got the big dude with the white mask. This is the one that doesn't have the big dude with the white mask. So the plot this time is there is a doctor played by Tom Atkins named Dr. Chalice, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, one day a patient runs into his hospital, sort of like a rambling mad lunatic holding a mask from the Silver Shamrock Novelties Company. And this company has advertisements all over the TV that are counting down to Halloween, and they kind of annoy him. Dr. Chalice is just kind of a schlubby doctor man. And then one night after this madman runs into his hospital, the madman is murdered by a mysterious suited man. And before Tom Atkins can get to the bottom of it, the suited man lights himself on fire in his car, and the car explodes. Anyways, the daughter of the man who was murdered, played by Stacey Nelkin, shows up, and Dr. Chalice runs away with her when they try, because she is trying to find out what her father was up to and what happened, what were the events leading up to her father's murder. So she is going to try to get to the bottom of this by going to the Silver Shamrock Company, and they go to a small northern Californian town that's really just a factory town. And there they uncover spooky secrets about the Silver Shamrock Company and its owner, Cochran, played by Dan O'Hurley. I am very interested to know what you think of this movie, Comics Kid, because some have called it one of the worst horror movies of all time. It was widely hated upon release. Some consider this an underrated gem. Some even a criminally underrated masterpiece. Where do you fall, Comics Kid?
It's been a few years since I've seen the first couple of Halloween movies. Actually, I may have seen Halloween 2 last year, or it may have been the year before. But so I may be speaking out of turn, but this might be my favorite of the Halloween franchise. bear in mind, slasher films usually aren't my bag unless you're doing something ultra zany and crazy with it. I actually really enjoyed Jason X, which is throw Jason in space and have him on a space station with like nanites and cyborgs and stuff like that. I thought that was hilarious. I liked Freddy versus Jason. Those are the ones that most people don't like. So my opinion when it comes to slasher movies is not necessarily one to be taken that seriously. I thought the first Halloween movie was good. Historically, it's important if you like slasher movies because it really is what kicked off the slasher genre. Even though you had movies like Psycho from the 60s, the Halloween is what really got the ball rolling there. But I like this a lot more than any of the Michael Myers movies. I think, to your point about it being hated on release, I think if they had just called this movie Season of the Witch, I think it would have been fine. I think people would have liked it. But because people see the word Halloween and they think Michael Myers and what's her face, yeah, let's do this. And then it's not that. I think people went in wanting to hate it, or they flat out said, I'm not watching that because it doesn't have Michael Myers and I cannot remember her name. I know it's Jamie Lee Curtis, but whatever.
Laurie Strode.
That's it, yeah. Or Dr. Loomis. We've got to have Ernst Blofeld overacting and saying, you don't know what death is. I think this also, weirdly enough, feels more like a John Carpenter movie than the actual John Carpenter installments that came before. I know John Carpenter wrote and directed the firsted one. The firsted one, wow. The second one he wrote but didn't direct. I think that's how it went. But I feel like both of those feel more tame and safer than this one does. And we can talk more about that when we get to the very end of the movie. But at the end, I very nearly wanted to just stand up and applaud. And incidentally, there might be spoilers for like every John Carpenter movie I've ever seen. If anyone out there is like, I haven't seen The Thing and They Live and Escape from New York, and then maybe just stop the podcast right now and go watch all those. But I like this movie. I had never seen it before. I had heard people say that they didn't like it, or I had heard that it had a negative reaction, but I went in basically knowing nothing. I knew that there was something to do with masks, but I went in more or less cold, and I enjoyed myself. What about you?
Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is an interesting beast for me because I don't like it, but I don't dislike it. I'm really mixed on it. So
Okay.
It's like I see where people who hate this movie are coming from, and I see the people who love this movie and where they're coming from, and I just am not really in either camp of that. So this will be an interesting discussion, I think, because you might change my tune a little bit, but this was the second time I've seen the movie, and I liked it less this time than when I watched it the first time. But I guess I'll be interested to go into it with you. I should say I've only seen The Thing. I have not seen Escape from New York or They Live or all of those things. So
Okay.
I think we might need to stop this podcast right now so I can spend the whole day watching those. In all seriousness, though, so my thing about this movie is that I think it's okay. I like a lot of aspects about it, but I think very important aspects are just not good at all. I think the main character of this movie sucks. I think there's some humor that I get out of the movie, whether it's ironic or not, I don't know. I still enjoy it for a certain amount of time because like I think the writing is honestly pretty terrible in this movie, and I think the direction is pretty subpar. But I do think that the movie has a really good Halloween-y, spooky atmosphere thanks to a really great musical score and some really good cinematography. The cinematographer from the first two Halloween movies came back for this one, and he would later go on to be the cinematographer for the Back to the Future trilogy and Jurassic Park. So, yeah, Dean Cundey is kind of a legend, and sadly, he was the cinematographer for Jack and Jill as well. So,
I will say this. I actually agree with you that I think there are parts of the plot that make no sense, and I should have said that earlier. But a lot of what I do like about this movie is the atmosphere, and that might be a little hypocritical of me because there might be other movies that have a good atmosphere, but I would just tear into them because of a lackluster plot. And there are parts of this movie where I was watching it and I would say to myself, that doesn't make sense, or hang on a second. And some of it I'm willing to let slide, some of it not so much. But I think you're right. I think the atmosphere carries this movie a long way.
But I also think what's cool about it, what you're kind of hitting on there, is that like the Halloween holiday itself, you take it seriously, but you don't take it that seriously. And so like the movie takes itself seriously, but not that seriously. So you don't either.
Mhm.
And so if there are certain aspects of it that don't really make sense or don't really work, you kind of forgive it. Like I think this movie is horribly structured. There's like no structure to this movie. Like it is so meandering, and like plot points happen almost at random when they choose to like bop their heads in. But I do enjoy kind of watching these endless scenes just because, hey, it's got a nice Halloween vibe to it. But that being said, I think when you get to the final act, though, and there should have been some level of sinister undercurrent that needs to really show up at the end for some thrills and some suspense. I think the final act of this movie completely drops the ball. I think.
Oh, okay.
So I like the final scene, but
Okay.
I think the final scene is like completely let down by the entire half an hour leading up to it. So that's I'll let you talk now. Those are kind of the ending of my initial thoughts.
Okay, I will say this again. I don't disagree with you. I do actually like the main character. Here's the thing that I found myself liking. I think if they tried to make this movie today, they would get like Dr. McDreamy from Grey's Anatomy. They'd get some like total hunk that like is dropping panties all across the world just by people looking at him, and like he says a word and then just like it's like honey dripping onto your brain. And like this guy, I don't want to be mean, but he's just kind of an average. You said schlubby, and that's a great way to describe him. He's just kind of a normal dude. He is not a hero. In fact, most of this movie is him like he's curious more than anything. It's like this is a really bizarre thing, and I want to find out what's going on. And also, there's this hot chick, and so I definitely want to see what's going on there. But but like he's not your like square jawed like bare chested hero. You know what I'm saying? He's just a he I don't want to be mean, but he's not super hot. Like he's just a regular guy who gets in over his head, and I like that. I think that's charming. Any other movie on the planet, I feel like would have gone for some other guy, like the high school nerd who really has it bad for the homecoming queen, and then some sort of weird set of circumstances puts them both together, and then they start exploring this mystery, and then like they kiss right before they go into the factory to shut it all down. And I like that this movie doesn't do that. This movie has a normal guy who's kind of he sleeps around. He's a terrible husband. He's probably not a good dad. We only see him with his kids in one scene. But like every woman he meets, he's like slapping her butt or saying like, "Hey, I'll pay you back later and give you, I'll buy you some drinks. How about that?" And he's not a great guy, but I like that the movie isn't over romanticizing its lead. It's just a normal dude, and I found that to be a nice change of pace from what I would have expected.
Well, and that's one of those things where I agree with you in theory. It's just that in practice, I think he is supposed to be a hunk, but he's not.
No,
like,
no.
Tom Atkins is an accomplished actor, so any humorous shade I throw his way, I'm sure he can take it. But like, so I guess full disclosure, I think Stacey Nelkin in this movie is one of the sexiest women I've ever seen in my life. Like top 50, if not like top 20. Like auga auga, right? Play, you show a GIF, show like the wolf from whatever Tex Avery cartoon, like whatever. Like that's me whenever she shows up on screen, whatever. Anyways, but you have this, I think, hilarious scene where like they're about to get it on, and she like lays down in bed, and she has this like lingerie on, and she just looks incredible. And then as the shot like lingers, a sea monster slithers on top of her and starts like kissing her body, and I cannot stop laughing. I think I see some barnacles growing on his armpit or something. It's so funny. But like that's sort of the thing about this movie that I do find a little endearing. Like how like there's a sort of innocence to it where you can't take it that seriously, but there are some stakes that you do buy. It's a hard balance to strike. I think the movie's treatment of women is awful. Like it's really kind of terrible, but I can't like get mad at it because the movie's not that I can't take it that seriously, but you have fun while you're watching it. I don't know, like it's I feel like I'm describing that I find this like ironically entertaining. I don't. I think it's trying to go for a specific kind of tone and style, and it does succeed. Um, I just think that when it comes to the main character, you're right. Like I like the idea of getting a normal guy. Like there's like a part where he goes to ask a question, and instead of being like, "What's going on here?" he says it like, "What's going on here?" You know what I mean? Like, and so he's just some guy. Like, it's such a weird premise. I'm a doctor who's playing detective. Sure, why not? That's weird and kind of fun, right? You don't see those kinds of things. And he's just some guy with a mustache. And like the movie, I think, is aware that he's not a good guy. There's this again really funny part where he's talking on the phone to his wife, and he's on the phone and he's like, honey, I know, there's something I really got to do. It's really important. I know I'll be back to take the kids trick or treating. Look, I got to go. This is very, very important. There's nothing I can do about it. Goodbye. And then he hangs up the phone, and then he grabs the 6-pack of beer on top of the payphone and hops into the car with one of this incredibly beautiful woman. And it's like, oh, this is very obvious what's happening right here. My brother and I laughed out loud when that scene took place.
Yeah, that was great. What was it about the treatment of women in this movie? Because I was trying to think, other than Stacey Nelkin's character, I agree, total babe. I feel like she is a little underwritten, but other than her, I didn't really feel like the other women were necessarily treated awful in the movie. I mean, they get like there's some brutal like kills. Like there's one woman who the microchip that is on all the masks, it like zaps her and like turns her face inside out. And then there's another woman who dies. But I didn't feel like the women were necessarily getting it worse than the men in some of these cases. So what?
I guess more of like the way the pen treats them, less so like yeah, like a little kid gets his head turned into bugs. Like dudes get their like airways like punctured. Like yeah, it's not necessarily the kills that got to me. It's more like Tom Atkins' ex-wife is treated like a complete harpy. The Stacey Nelkin character is really just there for Tom Atkins to have sex with. That's really kind of all she's really there for. There's the character that's just, and it's like all of these characters, like these ladies, like their motivation is like, ooh, I want to get it on with this dreamboat. And the second their utility to the main character is like done, they either are killed or become a villain and then die. And so it's like one of those things where it feels so antiquated. I don't know if that's just by design, though. If the idea is we're going to make a kind of fun, corny 50s B movie that has like outdated sexual politics and stuff, but that's sort of part of the fun. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure what it is.
It could be. And you know, like with some of the characters, like there's the woman who works at the like he keeps calling her to say like, can you identify what's going on with that body that, you know, the guy who lit himself on fire. I don't remember it's not a mortician, but she's like the assistant to the main guy. And like, he keeps calling her to be like, hey, can you move the plot forward? And like, I guess I'm kind of okay with like, yeah, she keeps trying to like do stuff for him concerning a plot. And then like she dies. I'm kind of okay with that because she was always a minor character. Really, there's only Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin are the two main characters, and everyone else is just kind of there to be other faces in the movie, you know? So it didn't bother me too much, but I don't disagree with you. I think most of the other women are underwritten, but I would also say most of the other men are as well.
Sure. But I'm just saying, like, as far as their, like, why, so the character who's, I guess I'll just call her the mortician, why kill her?
Yeah.
Why send a robot all the way down to kill? I mean, I get it. It's a horror movie. You need to have characters die. I am applying a level of critique to it that I'm just sort of, my brain is just going here. I don't even really care that much in the context of this movie. You know what I mean? Like I don't. Anyone listening, I'm not taking these like criticisms even that seriously as I'm saying them. But I'm just putting it out there that whenever their relevance to Tom Atkins has been served, then it's dispose of them. Because we can't get on the phone with her anymore. Okay, kill her. We finally, like, the damsel in distress has been rescued. Okay, she's a robot now. Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one of those sort of things where
that's a good point. I was going to say, like, well, maybe Dan O'Harely sent the robot to kill the mortician so that his plan doesn't get out there. But then I was thinking, no, probably not, because at this point his plan is pretty well. It's like in The Watchmen. Spoilers for this movie and for The Watchmen. It's like in The Watchmen, like, I did it 35 minutes ago. Like there at this point, there's nothing to be done about it. So I was gonna say, well, that's why she died. But then I was like, no, that's probably not it. But I think you're onto something there. I wasn't necessarily thinking about that, and I think you're right. Part of it is in a horror movie, like, you have kills every so often, and this probably they were looking at the clock and be like, oh, we need to have something else happen here. The mortician, she dies.
But what else would she prove? Like, right, where it's like, oh, I found out this person was a robot. That means the masks are going to turn all the kids' heads into bugs. Of course not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ever going to have a chance to say this again. I had a weird thought when I was watching this movie, and I don't know if you've ever had this where you think the plot is going to go in a certain direction, and then it doesn't go in that direction. And in this case, I don't think that this would have improved the movie, but I can't stop thinking about this weird thing that I thought was going to happen. And this is partly helped by the fact that every woman in the movie kind of has a thing for Dr. Chalice. So at one point, they are in town. You know what? I'm going to put a pin in that. You mentioned earlier that the structure of this movie is, like, very meandering. I 100% agree with you. I didn't watch this all in one sitting. I watched it yesterday, and I actually paused it a couple of times throughout the day to, like, because I would take like an hour-long break to go do something. But the first, I'd say the first third of the movie is very slow. It starts off 8 days before Halloween, and then it will be like 3 days later. And then, like, he's talking to the mortician, and she's like, I'm sorry, that it's going to take a few more days. And then it's like 2 more days later. And then he's at the bar, and then he meets Stacey Nelkin's character. And then, like, the whole time I kept thinking, like, this whole plot could have started on, like, October 30th. And we could have, like, been like like the movie Halloween, where it starts on Halloween Day, and the whole plot is in the span of one day, and it's all happening really fast. But this takes place over a week and change. And, like, I felt like that really slowed the pacing down at the beginning. And then they drive, like, another town over to where the factory is. And then it feels like the plot is starting over again, where we're meeting all these secondary characters who are showing up in that town because they need to pick up, one lady needs to pick up an order of masks. And then there's a family that's there because the dad of that family, he is a salesman for, like, a Halloween store. And it feels like we're just starting the movie, and that's like the beginning of Act 2. And so all of Act 1 kind of feels superfluous. It's setting stuff up, like it's setting up the meeting of our two main characters, but I definitely did feel like the first act could have been streamlined quite a bit, and probably could have been combined a little bit into Act 2. I don't know what you would have done with the movie at that point, because it would have been quite a bit shorter, but I was watching my clock quite a bit during the first chunk of the movie. I don't know if that was the part you were thinking of, but for me, that beginning of the movie was pretty slow.
I guess I agree. I also think there's, like, the second act is very stretched out as well. There are scenes where Tom Atkins is just kind of walking around, and I guess there's supposed to be some kind of building tension or something. There's long sequences where he's just having sex with Stacey Nelkin, like, all day long until all of a sudden someone next door dies, and then he's scared. By the way, he gets it in twice, and right before they're about to go at it for a third time, then he thinks to ask, wait, how old are you?
Yeah. and she doesn't even answer. She just says, don't worry, I'm older than I look. And, like, first of all, you're right. Like, that's a question, like, card her at the door. Don't wait until she's already inside. And second of all, like, when she doesn't even answer, I'd be like, oh dear God, what just happened? What have I done? But
By the
but
way, it's one of those things where I think it's kind of cool though at the end of the movie when, he's running around, it's like, oh, he's sort of like become her father, which makes sense because he's old enough to be. Anyway, sorry, that was just a whole setup for a joke. What were you going to say?
No, that first of all, that even though that was a joke, you just said that's a good analysis because that is a good mirror. I didn't think about that, but it is kind of a mirror of the first scene. I wasn't really thinking about that, but yeah, I think like the middle part, like there's one part I thought was weird where you hear on the radios in this small town like everyone go inside. It's 6 o'clock. It's curfew time. Keep all of your activities limited to the inside of your home. And then we cut to the doctor like leaving a convenience store and he's got like a bottle of wine. And I was thinking like, is there going to be some kind of like consequences to him being outside after curfew? Oh no, like he meets a homeless guy maybe, and then the homeless guy gets killed. But like the homeless guy's killed because he threatened Connell, what's his face, Daniel Cochran, yeah. So like thought that was weird where it's like it sets up like this almost 1984-ish like totalitarian state in this town. And then we cut to the guy just walking around outside. And like I was expecting one of those robot guys to be like, hello, sir, you need to go inside right now. Like something like that. And I was thinking like, wait a minute, someone had to be working at that convenience store. So like there's at least one local in this town who is not following curfew. But yeah, I agree. I think the second act is also kind of slow. I don't know how you would fix it because if you condense the first and second act, you would just have like an hour-long movie. But I don't know, like obviously I think there are rules like a feature-length film, especially one nowadays like shown in a theater, has to be a certain length. And I don't know if they would have been able to have met that length if they had like trimmed out all the fat that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't know how they fix it. It's a weird conundrum that I found him in.
Well, I think this is a very good time to deploy my ultra crazy read on this movie.
Okay.
You said you don't know how they could fix it. I say they already ripped this plot off from another movie.
Oh, what's that?
And that movie is Dr. No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So basically what we have is a womanizing main character who gets involved with a plot where the love interest has a father who was involved with the villain of the movie, and in order to get to the villain of the movie, they need to go to a location where the villain sort of is the king of his domain. In the case of Dr. No, it is that Jamaican island. In the case of this movie, it is the town of Santa Mira. And what ends up happening is they're snooping around. They get to try to look around and try to infiltrate before eventually getting kidnapped. And then when they're kidnapped there, the bad guy kind of reveals their master plan. The woman is held hostage in a separate room from the main character, who is also being held against his will. They break out and then use the vents to crawl around and find the love interest and free her. And then they also sneak into the big laboratory and do some shenanigans, and the big factory blows up at the end. The end.
And then Ursula Anders turns out to be a robot.
And then, yeah, obviously she's a fembot, a la Austin Powers too. So there you go. Bada bing, bada boom. I think this movie's plot is straight up just Dr. No reskinned, and that makes me laugh a lot that Sean Connery is now Tom Atkins.
Yeah, when you first said it, I was like, wait, like it took my brain a few minutes to connect the dots. I was like, okay, I think so. And then the more you said it, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, and then that, yeah, and so that does sound like it, yeah. And what's funny to me is Gavin O'Harley, who we've already talked about in Willow. He's the son of this movie's villain. He was in one of the Roger Moore James Bond movies, I believe.
My God! There's so many circles within circles.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of funny that this is so similar to that, because you really wouldn't think it would be, like with this being I don't know, like a different genre altogether. Like you wouldn't think that a horror movie with sci-fi and supernatural elements would be ripping off what's a pretty grounded spy movie from the 60s. That just doesn't seem like something that would happen. But I'm wondering if, because there were apparently three screenwriters on this. There was a guy named Nigel Neal. I don't know if I'm saying that right. He apparently wrote a script, and then Tommy Lee Wallace did a pass on it, and then Nigel Neal hated what was done to his script, and so he wanted his name taken off the movie. Or maybe I think John Carpenter did the second pass, and then Tommy Lee Wallace did the third. But Nigel Neal did not like what was added to his script. But then Tommy Lee Wallace said about 60% of the movie is from that first script. So I am curious if any one of those men was subconsciously or consciously thinking of Dr. No. But that's an interesting take. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I'm curious to know if anyone listens to this, what they think of that. But that is something that has been burning a hole in my brain for years now since I first watched this. I guess I should say, I think I mentioned this at the end of our last episode, but if anyone's just listening to this episode, I have been meaning to pick this movie for years now. I was always going to have this be my Halloween pick, and I never got around to it. But speaking of the pick, what do you think of Dan O'Herlihy in this movie? Because I think he's the best thing about the movie.
He is really good. He's not in it a lot, and I think the movie wisely sparsely uses him. I think if they had him show up any more, we would have been worn out on him, I think. But him showing up just enough, I think works very well. I don't know if you have ever seen the Stephen King miniseries Needful Things, but Max von Sydow is in that, and he plays basically Satan, I think, or, the Stephen King universe of like the most evil thing in the world. Like, there's different versions of it in different Stephen King things, but I was getting a lot of Max von Sydow in Needful Things here, and I think actually this predates that by a good little bit, but I was getting very similar vibes from the performance in that I feel like Dan O'Herlihy, his character is very nice and polite and courteous. But even if I wasn't watching a movie, if I met this guy in real life, I would think there's something off about him. And I do think there's that other family, the Kupfers. I feel like they kind of pick up on it too. Because like when he says, no, not that mask, little boy, this mask here. And the dad says, well, what's the final process on the masks? And he says, oh, I just can't tell you. And the guy's like, well, can I go up there that way? And he's like, no, no, no. And so like even these minor characters are kind of starting to pick up on like there's something weird and creepy going on with this guy. But he's like overly nice. Like doesn't have, even when he's explaining his master plan, he's not suddenly like, I'm going to kill all you people. Like he's still very courteous and nice to the doctor, like I'm still getting the sense of like, manners make a gentleman, everyone. Like, and so I like that he's not, once you find out he's evil, he's not just like a different person. He's still kind of acting the same. I feel like he, I don't know, like I don't have a whole lot to say about him, but I was kind of getting some like, I guess just the general like Max von Sydow. I don't know if he's British, but he's kind of playing that like British stereotype in Needful Things. But I was kind of getting some similar feelings there.
Okay, yeah, I've not seen Needful Things, but I think I understand the archetype where it is the seemingly polite old man, sort of wealthy patriarch type, and then you find out that he has skeletons in his closet. I think that it's a fun role for Dan O'Herlihy. I think he does a proper amount of scenery chewing. I think his big villainous monologue is awesome. And I like how he ends it with a happy Halloween in a very sinister voice. And I like how his character sort of set up as this person who built his fortune with gags and novelties and whatnot. And he sees Halloween as this sort of ritualistic thing where that, we've gotten away from the core of what Halloween means. And his big plan is, as he says, it is a practical joke on the children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is very practical. You are murdering children. But I think his plan is just hilariously absurd, where he has stolen a stone from Stonehenge. Sure, why not? And he's using this with the computer chips, and through a broadcast, he is going to turn all of the children who wear the masks and sit in front of the TV at 9 o'clock on Halloween night. He will turn all of their heads into bugs That's great. I love it. And I think the scene where the kid's head turns into bugs is great. And I love, even if I don't really like this movie all that much, I love the iconography of this movie. I love the masks. I love the Silver Shamrock jingle. I love the stuff with the TV. I really love the scene where it's Halloween day into evening, and we're just cutting to all around the country of the United States to these different locations, and the happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween jingle is going.
Yeah.
I think that scene is legitimately great, and that's like a great, like, ooh, I feel like I'm in the Halloween spirit now. And you know what? That Cochran, he might be a sick man, but he sure made me feel the spirit of Halloween.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I like how it makes the stakes feel bigger, because up until that point we've only been in these two small towns. Like, we've got one town where the doctor's from, and it's a small enough town that at night there's just one doctor roaming around the entire hospital, and then there's this other town with a population of like 12 people, and then suddenly we're cutting to like New York, Los Angeles, and so it's like, oh yeah, this is much bigger than what you initially thought. I kind of like that.
What else do you want to talk about?
Okay, so earlier I started to allude to this, and I let us get off topic, but there's this family that shows up at this town where the Silver Shamrock company is located, and up until this point, Dr. Chalice has he manhandled the nurse a little bit. We met his ex-wife. Then he's talked to the mortician lady on the phone, I think, and then he's also kind of got a thing for this woman who he's helping investigate the Silver Shamrock thing. So we've already set him up as a little bit of a lady killer. And then this family comes out of their RV, and the woman comes out, and the way the scene was set, I thought that she was like kind of getting flirty with the doctor. And I don't know if that's just in my head, or if this actress was kind of trying to go for that. They don't ever do anything with that, but like the way she comes out, she's like stretching, and she kind of like waves at the doctor in kind of a playful way, and she's smiling. And it could just be that she's a really friendly character, because then later she's talking to the girl, and she's still acting very friendly with her. But I was getting a feeling that she was like kind of giving the doctor like bedroom eyes when they first met. And I like that never happens, but I was thinking the whole time, I was like, okay, this is going to happen at some point. And so I thought that was really weird. And I don't know if that was just me reading too much into it, or if that was kind of helped by the fact that the doctor is already like got a little bit of a reputation in our minds.
I think it might be a little bit of both. Like, you're right. Like, every single woman in this movie makes a pass at Tom Atkins, because he is an irresistible hunk of a man. You might not like it, but this is what peak masculinity looks like. But yeah, so I think it is definitely a little bit of that. It's also, I think I wouldn't be surprised if she was either instructed or had the idea of, ooh, I'm going to try to make a pass at him, because, or at least try to get a little flirty, because how could I not? Look how hunky he is. He's Tom Atkins after all.
And it could be that she or the director was wanting to imbue this fairly minor character with a little bit more dimension, because if you took that away from her, that possible read into the character, then she really is just wife. And if you have her as like, oh, I'm possibly interested in this other guy, then that doesn't do much in the way of enhancing the women of this movie, but it does at least enhance and edify this particular character just a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
You go ahead.
I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
I guess I mentioned earlier, there are several things in the movie where I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And in some cases, I'm willing to let it slide. In other cases, I'm a little bit more critical. One of the things that I was willing to let slide, so at the very beginning of the movie, we see there's a gas station attendant watching the news. And on the news, it says like, one of the Stonehenge rocks has gone missing. We have no idea how it happened because it weighs 5 tons. And then later we see it at the Silver Shamrock Company, and Dan O'Harely doesn't bother explaining how they got it. He just says, we had a time getting it here. And I'm perfectly okay with that. If I was more invested in the plot mechanics of the movie, I might have been a little upset that they set up this mystery and then didn't explain how they got it here. frankly, I didn't need an explanation because the idea that Stonehenge is ancient magic and they're using ancient magic along with technology to turn children into bugs, yeah, I'm fine with that. Like that's okay. But then I also had other things where like at the very beginning of the movie, we see the girl's father. He's running, and then he's being chased by what we later find out are these cyborgs that are trying to silence him so he doesn't alert everyone to the plan of the Silver Shamrock Company. And then my question was, how did he find out? Because we later find out he is just a delivery man, and he was supposed to pick up a shipment and deliver it somewhere. And I am curious, how did he find out that the Silver Shamrock Company was doing what they're doing? How did he find out exactly what their plans are? Because later we see that they still have his car in the factory, and that's why he was on foot running to this other town. And I have no idea how he got to this other town on foot when when his pursuers were in cars. But that's one of those things where like it probably doesn't matter because this movie is more about atmosphere than it is having an airtight plot. But if you do care about having an airtight plot, that might bother you a little bit. That like somehow he finds out and we don't really know how.
The backstory is it cheats, and so like it makes it basically make no sense. So, and it all relies on like a sort of last minute question you must have. Has Stacey Nelkin been a robot this whole time, or was she replaced with a robot at some point?
Yeah, that's a good question because
like because you have to start working backwards. Okay, if she's been a robot this whole time and it was her plan to like for whatever reason bring Dr. Chalice into this and let him escape or not, you have to think why, but also you have to think, okay, well, what if she's just a robot saying that this is her father and it's not actually her father? And then you think, oh, okay, well, what if she just said her father was dead? Well, then, and you never really saw the father and it was all a trap. Well, I don't know. We already have this scene where this guy is running in at the beginning and we see him running, we see him getting killed by the robots, and we see Stacey Nelkin identify the body, which presumably they called her. And so it's like the mechanics of that plot would have to be legitimately insane if all of this was planned out, right? Like that is one heck of a practical joke that Cochran is playing on, I guess, us, the audience. I don't know. I'm really confused.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking too much about was she a robot the whole time, although that's a good question. I was more thinking about when, like, so we see the Silver Shamrock. There's that one woman who's there to pick up an order of masks for whatever town. I think she said she works in LA. And she has the little microchip, and she's kind of messing around with it, and then it zaps her face, and then it looks like the skin is like halfway peeling off, but also her skull doesn't entirely look human. Like it's kind of transformed her face a little bit while also like melting part of her face. And I was thinking, okay, so that's the purpose of the mask then. And then later we see the mask and what it's actually supposed to do. And there's a kid wearing the mask, and then he's listening to the Silver Shamrock jingle, and then it like turns his head into snakes and bugs and stuff, and the snakes come out and bite his parents. And I thought, okay, so that's what it's supposed to do. But then at the end of the movie, suddenly the woman is a robot. And I thought, okay, did this happen because she got zapped by the Shamrock microchip? Or like, because we know he has robots. He has several of them working for him. He has the old lady who's knitting, and she's a robot who can't like interact with people.
Well, no, that's just an old like 1700s mechanical thing that Tom Chalice thought was like a person, but it was just like a sort of porcelain.
Gotcha. Okay. But then Dr. Cochran, he does have like the robots working for him. And then does he have the real woman imprisoned somewhere else? And then this robot, he just had it on standby to like throw off, Chalice so that he doesn't interrupt his plan. Because then if that's the case, then robot Cochran or Chalice. So there's a lot of questions there, and I feel like that is probably like, what wouldn't it be crazy if if this woman turned out to be a robot and she turned on him? And that's like a it almost feels more at home in like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like you can't really trust her, and then like it's keeping you on the edge of your seat. Here's another thing that's like wild and crazy, but it doesn't really fit with any of the plot of the movie, and like what we're kind of getting at. The character reason. Why would Cochran create this robot or turn her into a robot? Either way, like, why would he do that? Because it doesn't really have anything to do with his plan to have the children wear the masks and, create all the chaos for Halloween. Like, it doesn't really have anything to do with that. Also, I feel like there was another one that I was thinking about. Probably not. So a big part of this is Stonehenge. In later Halloween movies, I want to say 5 and maybe 6, you find out that Michael Myers is connected to a druid curse. And that I think a lot of people finally kind of dropped, like they lost interest in the movies around that point. But watching this, I was like, oh, hey, druid magic with Stonehenge, druid curse later on. And I think John Carpenter was pretty much out of the movies by that point. But I did find that interesting that there's like a sort of weird connection there.
Yeah, and another connection that this has to Halloween 2 is that when Cochran is going on his big villain monologue, he talks about the ritual of Samhain or Shemaine or something like that. And that word, I think it's spelled like Samhain, Samhaim. That is written on a blackboard or something in the second Halloween movie. Like Michael Myers presumably wrote that on a blackboard in a school or something.
Oh,
and the cops find it, and so I don't know if that's sort of like trying to a little bit of connective tissue between the two, because this also shares a little bit of connective tissue with the first one in that Halloween, the 1978 film, is a film in this movie.
Yeah. Chalice is watching it in the bar at one point. And so that to me, like, before we got to the ending of the movie, I was thinking, oh, this could all like, so I like timelines. I like, trying to fit everything together, and you've got the first 2 Halloween movies, and then 4, 5, and 6, they're their own timeline. Or you could go Halloween 1 and 2, H2O, Resurrection, or you could go Halloween 2018, and then all the sequels to that, or you could just have the Rob Zombie movies, or you could just have this movie. But then I was watching it, I was thinking, maybe this movie is set in the Jamie Lee Curtis timeline, and it's kind of like in the movie Scream, where the events from the first movie were so well known that they got turned into a film. And so I was watching it, and I was like, it all fits. And then we got to the end of the movie. If you haven't watched the movie at this point, you have plenty of chances. I guess we're going to just spoil it now. Do you mind if I talk a little bit about John Carpenter's filmography on the whole?
Go for it.
I feel like most of the time, a lot of his movies, I don't know if nihilistic is the right word, but a lot of them have like a huge downer ending, where like the hero doesn't win. That seems to be like the defining character trait of most of his movies. Of the ones I've seen, I think the one I would say is the exception would be like Big Trouble in Little China, where that one is mostly just a comedy movie, and they pretty much they are victorious in what they're setting out to do. But in The Thing, everyone dies, and the ones who don't are going to very soon, because all of their transportation and ways of getting out of there are gone. And then in Escape from New York, while the hero lives, it's a very hollow victory. And then in They Live, that's one where it's kind of similar to this. There's like aliens who are trying to infiltrate society, and then the heroes fail in their quest to try and put a stop to it. And then in like Ghosts of Mars, that's not one of John Carpenter's better movies, but in that there are these creatures that are virtually unkillable. And then the main character gets away from this settlement where all these creatures had killed pretty much all of the humans there. She gets back to another settlement, and then off screen, you're hearing that the creatures have now made it to where she is, and she and Ice Cube like get some guns to go out and fight these creatures, and it just stops. And so like you're thinking, okay, but they're not going to live because they weren't able to kill the creatures before. The creatures are unkillable. And so Ice Cube and this other chick, I can't remember her name, they're going to either die or they're just going to keep running, and these creatures are going to keep coming. And so like John Carpenter's movies seem to have this like the heroes are not going to win. and everything is horrible, and evil is going to win. And so at the end of the movie, Chalice and the chick, they blow up the factory, and like right before they do, Cochran, he just smiles and starts clapping, and I thought that was a really great take. Like, he's not angry that like he's not upset that he's about to be killed. It's just kind of like, well, you got me. And I thought that was pretty good. But they blow up the factory, and I thought, oh, that's kind of easy, isn't it? Like, and I was thinking like the Phantom Menace, or in the first Avengers movie, where like you throw a nuke in the portal and then all these creatures just fall down and stop. Or like you blow up the command base and all these robots just stop. And I felt like that was what they were doing. Like, they blow up the big stone, and then all these microchips are not going to do anything. And then the day is saved. And then there's still like 10 minutes left of the movie. And I thought, what are they doing now? Like, is there going to be a whole lot of credits here? And then they're like, the robot thing happens with the girl, and then he's able to defeat her, and then he gets back to town, and then he's like, talking to like a TV producer on the phone, and it's like, oh, okay, the plan is still in motion, even though Cochran is dead, even though the giant stone has been destroyed. All these little pieces of the stone in the microchips are still going to do the thing. And so he's like calling this TV station saying like, turn it off. And then this kid comes in and turns on the TV to watch that commercial. And then like it says technical difficulties. And then you're thinking, oh, okay, he won. So then the kid just turns to another station, and it's that commercial, and then technical difficulties. And then the kid turns it again, and then it just ends on Chalice screaming like, turn it off, turn it off. And it just ends. And this is why I said this feels more like a John Carpenter movie to me than Halloween 1 and 2, that John Carpenter was actually more heavily involved with. Because in those where you could say like all of Jamie Lee Curtis's friends die, and at the end of the first Halloween movie, Michael Myers escapes. We don't know what happens to him. But in the sense that like pretty much every slasher movie is going to end with your final girl being victorious, it feels more heroic and triumphant than any of the other John Carpenter things I've talked about. But this one feels more like depressing and doom and gloom along the lines of all these others that I've talked about. And I thought that was really interesting. It floored me. I was not expecting it. I thought that was a pretty great ending.
I would agree that I like that last scene. My issue, though, is like the half an hour leading up to it is I feel like the stakes are very ill-defined. You have Tom Atkins, who is a father, and his kids have these masks, and he can't call anybody, and oh no, things are starting to stack up. You know, the deck is starting to get stacked against Tom Atkins. Oh no, what's going to happen? So he calls his wife, and then it's just kind of treated like a joke that his wife's a harpy. You know, that oh, you're just jealous because I got the kids the masks they like, and you're telling me to throw them away because you can't. And he's like, no, you don't get it, you harpy. Anyway, so, but at no point is he like, okay. He never like explains what his plan even is. He doesn't say, we need to get out of here. I need to call the or I need to call the TV stations. We got to stop that jingle. We got to stop the thing from happening. He never says that. And he never like even verbalizes, my kids are in danger. My kids are in danger. Like, I don't even know what he's really thinking. He just sort of does things because he's a main character in a movie. And I guess this is what main characters do. And then he kind of realizes, oh, there's a whole box here full of the little like little chips, that little badges that go on the back of the masks. I'm gonna send them raining from the rafters onto the Dr. No control panel, and that'll blow everything up. Why not? And then it does, and then I guess he wins, and everything blows up. And then he says, "Okay, I'm gonna get out of here." And then there's the bit where with the fembot, and that one is like it's kind of funny because you can tell that the actress is just below the frame when the arm is strangling him. That made me laugh. But that at that point, like, it feels like that is the immediate danger, and he's just sort of heavily breathing and catching his breath, and like the urgency just completely leaves the movie. And so when he does start, when the final scene starts with where he's running into the gas station and he meets the gas station attendant who he last saw at the clear beginning of the movie, it feels like all of a sudden, like, this is a scene in a sequence of a it's a part of a different sequence where there is more urgency. But I feel like the last half hour really takes the urgency and throws it away.
Okay. Um, I guess I didn't really have that. I don't know what he could do in the like if he was able, because the movie kind of, and you're right, the movie treats the ex-wife pretty horribly. But if the movie like, because it establishes early on where she's like yelling at him when he's at the hospital and like a guy has just blown himself up in his car, and if we've already shown that like she won't give him a chance to explain when something is going on, and so even if he was able to explain, I don't like he would come off as kind of crazy if he said like there's this guy, he's designing all these masks and they're going to turn the children's heads into bugs and snakes whenever they watch this jingle at 9 o'clock. Like everyone would kind of call him crazy. And like even when he's on the phone with the person at the TV station, he says, I don't have proof, you just have to believe me. And so like I felt like he was doing everything he could, and he was kind of just in a desperate situation, and he was just doing anything that he could do.
Yeah, I get that in the last scene. I just think leading up to that, and this I feel like kind of a sort of thing where the actor I don't think was really doing a whole lot to signal to me what was going on in the character's mind. He just sort of looks like a schlubby dude who's like kind of looking around going, I wonder how I'm going to blow up this place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like while he's doing that, I'm not thinking that character is thinking about his kids, because those are the personal stakes, right?
Yeah.
Because he blew off the kids to go, drink beer and get it on with this like hot lady. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of the way it's all set up, and that's why I feel like the last half hour like needs to have a level of like sinister, like the whole movie needs to have this sort of sinister undercurrent that becomes to the top, that comes to the surface in that final half hour. And I feel like when it's required to do that, the sinister qualities I felt were very lacking.
Okay. So do you think it would have helped if there was a scene where they're both captured by Cochrane and they're both in the same room and he says something like, I haven't been the best father. I blew off being, their caretaker this weekend to come here. I wish I could have talked to them one last time. I need to, we have to get away out of here because they had those masks. Like, something to remind us that he has kids, because, we see him interact with him once at the beginning of the movie, and then, he talks with his wife on the phone. And so am I understanding that you're...
Sure, yeah, I mean, it could be that, or it could be, he rescues Stacey Nelkin. The thing is, she can't have any lines because the robots don't talk.
Right.
And that's sort of what they're doing. And so maybe have it to be where they're sneaking around and he's talking to her and he says, "Oh my gosh, we gotta figure out a way to stop this." Or when they're in the car at the end, he just have a thing where he should say, "I need to get to a telephone. My kids are in danger." Something like that. You know what I mean? You could even have it in that scene where they're driving at the end. I don't know. It's just sort of,
and
I feel yeah.
That's where I feel like, because I agree with you that a lot of this movie is meandering. I do feel like sometimes it feels like this movie is just going scene to scene. We'll set up this thing here, and then we'll just kind of, the character's going to sleep around a little bit here, and then they get captured here, and there's stuff that the woman is messing around with a microchip and it blows up her head, and then that doesn't really contribute to their detecting around the town. It ultimately has nothing to do with them getting captured. So a lot of stuff that happens in this movie is not necessarily part of a sequence of events, if that makes sense. It's just kind of, here's a whole bunch of stuff that happens, but you could remove certain things, or you could take things and rearrange them, and it wouldn't really change necessarily. And so I would agree with that. I was also thinking it is a little silly that Cochrane comes in when the woman is being loaded on the ambulance, and then he turns around and says to one of his guys, "What happened?" And they're like, "Misfire, sir." And Chalice and the woman are right there, and they were able to hear the whole conversation. I was thinking if I was Cochrane, I'd probably go well away from these bystanders and have this conversation. Also, I did think it was a little silly, and this is one of those things where the movie has to happen, and so this has to happen for the movie to happen. But when I was a kid and I liked dressing up, I didn't care about the particular brand of mask that I wore. I just I'm going to be a pirate this year, or I'm going to be Superman, or I'm going to be whatever. And I was an old woman one year. I had an old lady mask, and so like I didn't care about the brand as long as I had a costume. But this movie, I get the feeling like, because at one point the dad, he gives the kids costumes, or gives them masks, and they're like, oh, we don't like these, we like Silver Shamrock. And then it's like, we love watching the commercial. And I was thinking, like, I don't think kids really care about like a particular brand of mask or costume. But if you don't have that, then you take away the entire conceit of the movie.
I will say I buy that element of it. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't want just like toy cars. I wanted Hot Wheels.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want I don't know. Like it's that kind of a thing, right? Where like the marketing of the Silver Shamrock Corporation has really built a sort of brand recognition and brand loyalty, sort of like Disney. Like when you're a kid, you know the difference between a DreamWorks movie and a Disney movie. You know what I mean? Like there's an understanding there. So when they say like it's the Silver Shamrock, we want Silver Shamrock, I buy that. To me, that makes sense, anyways.
Okay. I guess because like you're right. Like when I was a kid, if I was a kid, like if my parents said, here's an X-Men action figure, I'd be all over that. Or if they said, here's generic Laser Man from Big Lots, I'd probably be okay with that too. I would say as a kid, I would have been more excited for a character that I recognized. But if you gave me generic Laser Man, I probably would have been happy with that too. But I certainly can see that, what you're saying. But I guess for me, like, and Halloween has always been like when I was a kid, I enjoyed it, but as an adult, it's always been kind of strange and foreign to me because like I get excited for it, and then nobody comes to my house, and so I'm left with all this candy to eat, and first world problems, am I right? But but like as an adult, I would be like, it's a mask, like it may be a cheap mask, but hey, it's a mask, like I guess, and I'm always kind of like, if there are people who are like, I have to have like the best brand of clothing and this really sexy car. Like for me, I've always been sort of pragmatic. Like it's a car, it gets me from point A to point B. I don't care if it's ugly, or like it's clothes, like it keeps me from going out naked. So like you know what I'm saying? Like that I guess that's just my weird, like I'm definitely in the minority there when it comes to that. But I can probably see that being a concession I can make with this movie.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the movie is trying to be like a sort of have like some kind of satirical elements about 80s consumerism and stuff. So, and in this world, I can believe it.
Yeah. There was one more thing I had to say. I was looking on trivia on the Internet Movie Database, and it was saying that the Silver Shamrock commercial plays 14 times. I only counted 13. I don't know when I missed it, but there's a couple of moments, like there's one moment near the very end where it's showing just a whole bunch of people grabbing masks from the stores, and it like plays a little bit of the song, and then it stops for a second, and then it starts playing it again. And I don't know if you would count that as one instance or two, but I was early in the movie when I was hearing it, I was like, I'm going to keep count and see how many times I hear it. So I only heard 13 myself. I don't know when I was missing it, though.
Yeah, I didn't realize it played that many times. But that jingle is great. I love it. I know it's just London Bridges, but it's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't have anything else to say, I don't think. Like I said, you're right, 'cause like I think a lot of the problems you have with it, most of them, I think I had those problems as well. Like I did think that the movie was a little slow. I did think that it was in places I was like, this is a little weird. I thought it was kind of funny that like I think it's sort of necessary to the plot that the doctor and this woman are having sex, because like there's someone who dies while they're having sex, and she says, did you hear that? He says, who cares? And if they weren't having sex, they would have gone and investigated that, and then they would have found the woman, and that would have changed like the whole trajectory of the movie. So they have to be doing something where he would say, that's not important right now. They can't just be playing chess or whatever, and like, yeah, this is fine, this will hold till later. But I don't really buy any kind of relationship between these two. They meet and he was the doctor who who was there and like who met her dad. And then like they get to town, and he's like, well, since there's just one bed, I'll sleep on the floor. And she says, you can sleep wherever you want, doctor. And it's like, where did this come from? Like, and I get like, maybe you're right. Maybe the movie is saying that he is like the hunkiest man in the world, but I found it to be weird. And I always kind of find that whenever characters just immediately fall in bed with each other, sometimes it happens. Like, one night stands are a thing, but then sometimes the movie doesn't treat it like a one night stand and treats it more like, yes, they're finally hitting it and quitting it. All right. And like, I thought this was a weird situation where like these two just met and then they're already like getting together.
The first time I watched this, I expected it to be like they get it on and then she falls asleep and then wakes up in the morning and he just took off. And like she would be the main character for the rest of the movie. That's what I thought was going to happen.
And then he like finds like a robot woman, and he's like he sees that woman knitting, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go out for drinks later?" And then Cochran says, "No, that's an antique. What are you doing?" Did you have any other final thoughts on the movie?
I did not.
Okay, I'm glad you chose this. I really enjoyed this. I think the first Halloween movie is really good, and part of my problem with that is my opinion on it is colored by the fact that there are 1,000 sequels and reboots to that movie, and so with this, I liked that we just got to have a standalone movie. I am still a little upset that John Carpenter's vision of having an anthology series never got to fully play out. And if he had done that, maybe he would have gotten a whole bunch of other subpar movies that didn't really work. But I appreciated the attempt. I kind of like that he at least got to make a go at it.
And I want to say I agree. I wish the Halloween series did continue in this direction, which it did not.
And some of the Halloween movies I like, but I don't think any of them are as good as the first one, in the Michael Myers chronology. And I would even say I don't think any of the sequels are as good as this one. Even with all the problems this has, I still think I like this better than all the others that I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen the first 3 Halloween movies, and I've seen the 2018 movie. The last time I saw it, I just don't really like the original Halloween movie that much. If the Rich Evans in a Red Letter Media video explains why he's not crazy about it, I have basically the exact same thoughts about that movie. Where I like the atmosphere, I like the tone. If it wasn't made with so much skill and style, then I would probably just not like that movie. But I do think it has a great ending. I think that Laurie's theme gets played so many times in that movie, it makes me want to throw my TV out the window. But it's just like I don't find that movie scary at all. I don't think it's about anything, and I think that it's very overrated. So I think, but the thing is, like, I do think it's better than this movie, Halloween 3. But I will say I think Halloween 3 is better than Halloween 2, which is just an extremely generic slasher movie. And I guess this might be heresy to some. I think the 2018 movie might be my favorite Halloween movie as of right now. Even then, I don't love it. I think it's pretty good, but nothing special. You know what I'm saying? But I'm glad we finally talked about this. This is like one of those movies where, as I was growing up, I was sort of witnessing the rehabilitation of this movie's image, where I remember being in middle school and only hearing about how much everyone hated this movie. And over the last 10 to 15 years, I've heard a lot of people reconsider this movie and make an attempt to give this movie more justice than the lashing it got in the early 80s, just because it didn't have Michael Myers. I think it's more than just not having Michael Myers. It's just not a very good movie, I don't think. But I do think it has good qualities. And I do think like this movie's not really trying to be that scary. It's trying to be spooky, and I think it's a little different than being scary.
Yeah. And I still think, even with all the problems, I think if they had just called it Season of the Witch, if they dropped the Halloween part, I think the movie would have been better received. It still would have had problems. Roger Ebert said this was one of his most hated movies. And I whether I agree with Roger Ebert's take on most things or not, I don't think that he's the kind of person who would have let himself get upset that this didn't have Michael Myers. So I would say he probably hated it based on its own merits, and instead of what like, oh, I wanted another slasher fest, why didn't we get that? So I think that if it had a different title, maybe it would have been better received, but it probably still, it would still be the movie that we talked about right now.
Yeah, a good point.
So I guess it's time for me to talk about, or for me to tell you what we're going to be talking about next time. Connor and I were talking about Tom Hardy before we started recording, and so our next choice is going to be the 2020 film Capone, which is going to be our second comedic biopic about a American mobster. And this one, the Twin Peaks connection, is Kyle MacLachlan. All I know about this movie is that looking at Internet Movie Database, it has a 4.7 out of 10. That actually looks a little high to me, but I know that Tom Hardy speaks in some kind of like guttural animal language in the movie. That's about all that I know about the film. I don't know like who Kyle MacLachlan plays or what kind of role he has, but hopefully it's comparable to Hank from Gotti. Hopefully we get a scene where Kyle MacLachlan blows up in a car to the tune of the West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys. I believe this is on Amazon Prime for free. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch this. My local library has it, so I'll probably check it out there. But I have never seen it. I don't watch a lot of mobster movies, but I'm looking forward to some entertaining trash.
Well, let me tell you something, Comics Kid. I'm currently watching through The Sopranos, and I think it's high time I finally watch some good mobster entertainment. So I'm going to watch Capone. I've actually seen this movie before. This will be my second time.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to this. I was gonna say we've had it too good lately. We've been watching, but then I was thinking I can't even remember the name of that show we watched last time, and then we had some issues with this. So and also looking at this movie, it's got Matt Dillon from that show that we talked about last time, and Linda Cardellini, who was in the McDonald's movie, The Founder. So. We're hitting up all kinds of connections here to the podcast we've been doing, but that's what we'll be talking about in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, I am the Comics Kid 2099.
And I'm Connor Nielsen. Ooh.
And we will see you guys in the future. In the meantime, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Happy
Halloween, 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 Halloween,
Halloween,
happy Silver Shamrock.